upon the introduction of the dragon gods, one thing that was going to be crucial was giving us a very good first impression. Mishima could have went with Alderaan and gave us more of a giant powerhouse monstrosity dragon god as the first looking dude they were, but instead we were given Mercphobia, who was pretty much the opposite of what would have been expected and anticipated, because he was obviously pretty much a reformed dragon at that point. He had decided that he didn't want to harm humans and be a calamity anymore, and because of that, he had began trying to turn his life around and help others. And obviously, when you look at the dragon gods we've seen so far, we obviously not Viernes, we haven't gotten to him at the point of recording this, but Selene, who is pro-human, but also very independent for her own pretty much wants. Like, she is very much for whatever is the most enjoyable for her. Alderaan is very anti-human. He's a very non-human helping dragon. He saw them as just cattle and something for it, pretty much just for them to consume and benefit, as the rest of his species. And Ignia doesn't seem to really care. He seems more about just, whatever the fuck is going on for him, whatever is the option for him that is best and fits whatever his goals are. But Mercphobia, we were given a much nicer individual. We were given somebody that had a very dark past. As we know, he used to kill humans all the time, crush them like insects, and really not even think twice about it. But at one point he met Caramel, and at that point he started to really kind of just bond with her and begin turning himself into a more reformed and kind dragon, which is very nice. I think that was needed for the story, given we ended with Acnologia before getting into 100 Years Quest, and beginning it with a dragon who is within that same range of is being a good person, realizing that he's done bad things, but at the same time, he knows he can't forget about it, but it's something that he's grown from and is now trying to direct himself and use his capabilities and what he can do to help others and to do things. Obviously, he was using his underwater temple to grow food for the townspeople. He was making sure that there weren't like shipwrecks, like watching out for any like lost ships or anything or anybody that might have needed aid. They have like medical care for fish. That's the weird one to me, because it's like, shouldn't like the sharks and stuff, like obviously fish eat each other. Funny thing, but it's like one of those things like I don't think it's supposed to be thought too much about. It's more of like a nice yet kind of funny one. But this character we were given, like I said, I think he fit perfectly because it goes with Natsu's whole belief, obviously, of like dragons are the exact same as people. They can be redeemed. They can walk down a better pathway. And Mercphobia was trying just that. The aspects, obviously, with like Ferris and everything around that, with him being mind controlled, him being messed with, and pretty much just resulted in the decisions of Caramel to help him, turned him essentially into a attack dog, just some extremely overpowered attack weapon that she could try and direct towards whatever she needed. Obviously, like they wanted to, as part of Selene's plan to get rid of the other dragon gods using Ferris, but in the process of that, I think it helped show a lot of the humanization that goes on between the characters that kind of fit this criteria. Alderaan was not supposed to be that. He's interesting in his own right, but he is not, like, he doesn't have any humanity to him. He is a dragon at the peak of his power. He is somebody who believes that the things below him belong to him and should be either consumed by him or done with whatever so he pleases. He clearly is more from that traditional sense from dragons of power and position is what determines the things around them. I mean, even in his form, he chose to have a crown. Whereas Mercphobia, I think that a very intriguing thing, but it's like one of those design things, is the eye mark he has, because their human forms are entirely by their own decision. Their dragon forms, what they actually look like, are what they actually look like. That's something that they look as, their species and how they grow off of like, different stages in their life and how that affects the way that their bodies are shaped. All of Ignia's spikes and everything all over him. At some point, those probably just had to come in out of nowhere. But in his human form, Mercphobia, he looks the most tame. He looks very calm. If you look at the other dragon gods, Celine's human form she chooses is like 8 feet tall, the tower over people. Ignea's is this primal warrior, like he's covered in these like battle tattoos. He's got obviously like pretty much like his whole chest exposed to show off his muscles. He's designed to intimidate. He wants people to see that he is a warrior. Whereas Alderaan, though, didn't take a humanoid form. You can get stuff from his godseed form and be able to understand a bit more about him. Obviously, the crown, I think, says a lot about his ego and a lot of how he sees himself. But Mercphobia, in his design and what he chose to look like as a human, he looks very like gentle, very, very, very calm and peaceful. He doesn't have a overly large stature. He doesn't have a intimidating like face. He doesn't do anything to look angry or to have this form be anything other than something that he just chooses more to coexist with the humans that he decides to aid and the people of Ermina. And I think one of the things that Mishima did, and that's why I said like it's a weird humanoid design trait with his eye tattoo, but I think Mishima did it to show like a good contrast between that humanization and that aspect of Natsu that he learned about forgiveness. Because though he did learn to forgive humans and obviously other people with Jalal, there was a difference there that we hadn't seen with dragons, because Natsu came to the logical conclusion that dragons are the same as people. You can't judge any of them in a group as bad. Not all whatever elemental dragons or whatever. You can't say all water dragons or all earth dragons, or even from one of the things that obviously was one of the dangerous things that happened with Acnologia and whatnot, is it was pretty much all humans at that point for them, all dragon slayers, regardless if they are dragons or potentially can become a dragon slayer, they were a threat and they should be destroyed. It's not like that, because obviously like we have dragons who are good and we have dragon slayers that were good. We have bad dragons and we have bad humans. We've seen that throughout the whole series. And a dragon who used to be fit right into that belief of obviously the living calamity and bloodthirsty terror like opponent, that could have still been something in the early portions of the story and been really cool just to see like how that would play out. But I think it was a better writing decision from Mishima to take Mercphobia and to put him in that redemption line, because with his eye mark, and I think it was intentional. I feel like this isn't a coincidence. He's got the eye mark, the blue hair, even some of his clothes, like the color like setup kind of looks and design reminds me a lot of Jalal. And I think that Mishima taking that and kind of like having nods to when Natsu learned how to forgive somebody, and then you had the events go on where he had to fight Mercphobia despite and against the fact that the dude wanted to do better, wanted to push his life in a more positive and constructive direction to help others instead of destroy and cause calamity. And when you look at that and then you see things like Natsu struggling to go against him, knowing that it's not something that he was trying to do, he knows and knew even at that time that Mercphobia was not doing this out of his own free will. He knew he was a kind dragon at this point. He was trying to live better. He was trying to go down that pathway that Natsu has seen, like people can, like even if they come from a darker past and darker decisions, they can improve, they can do better. And it's that kind of line between like the people who are too far gone that will never turn back versus those who have that shard being a bloodthirsty like monster, like that will kill and destroy anything that it comes across for pretty much whatever it decides that reasoning is justified for. So when we see all that, and then we see especially that like Natsu having to then really give him the work, the point where we weren't sure if Mercphobia was going to survive and make it out of there, that it really went and put a large level also of stock into what's going on with Natsu over with his Etheria side and stuff, because that showed that if it wasn't for Lucy, he would have completely moved past and destroyed one of his own rules and his own like philosophies and mottos that he lives life by, and that he has as that defining factor of, do I have to kill my opponent? Because we know that Natsu doesn't want to kill people. He doesn't want to kill his opponents. He wants to have a battle where they can pretty much like have a match of who's the stronger and more badass fighter, and that's it. But he learned that some people have to be killed. Some people are too dangerous and too much of a threat to be left alive. And when you took Mercphobia and you put somebody who you believed was going to be in that category, but because of his own actions and his own decisions and the way that he learned from life, he was able to really kind of slide right past of that mark. That's a big difference between Alderaan and Mercphobia. Is Alderaan stayed how he was, and Mercphobia ended up turning a new leaf, or at least trying to. He was trying really hard to do better. And when we had those two arcs, I think it was better going from Mercphobia to Alderaan than Alderaan to Mercphobia, because it showed Natsu with that struggle, but there's still knowledge of when he might have to deal with deal with his opponent like that, and might have to kill them. Whereas with Alderaan, it was at the point where he realized that he's like, okay, I have to do this. And like, even if Natsu was at a spot, like if he was getting pressed harder at that point, like say like Alderaan had another trick up his sleeve, it wouldn't have changed Natsu's perspective, because at that point it would have just been like, I have to kill him. I have to end this guy's life, or he's going to cause so much more misery and agony and absolute, again, destruction and chaos throughout the world for no real reason other than to do it. And I think that that's one of the great and valuable things about Mercphobia and his placement within the series, is he gave us a tone of that line. He gave us that understanding that Natsu went into that situation thinking, I might have to slay this dragon. We know that that was initially the idea in his head, that he was going to have to perform going into the battle. And it wasn't until they were like, okay, well, maybe the water dragon god isn't so bad. Maybe, if he's helping these people and they worship him and he's apparently like important to them, we should see if there's alternatives other than slaying him. And I just, we remember his response. He's pretty much said, okay, I'm willing to, to be peaceful and to be rational on this. But if any form of aggression happens that harms, any of you guys, any of my friends, then it's going to go back to killing the dragon. And then we learned about his backstory. Natsu clearly then was, touched emotionally by Mercphobia's revelations and the progress that he was putting forward. And then we saw how hard it was for him when they had to come back and fight him, because he knew at this point Mercphobia wasn't fighting of his own accord. He wasn't in his mind's clarity. He was at a point where he was just this rampaging animal, just causing havoc, just causing like a massacre. Like, if it wasn't for them, not like a full massacre, obviously none of those characters that we know have died, but that would have been even sadder. Killed a bunch of small characters, then he gets back at it, and then it's like, well, how do I face them anymore? But it was because of that we were able to see one and like a big side of Natsu. We were able to connect points of the story to give Mercphobia more value as a character, because at that point we understood more of the main character. We got more ties to the story, and it was able to give that role for Mercphobia more value and more reason to put stock and emotion into his character, more care into like this guy who, despite everything, despite all the odds against him, in like how he is power wise, people coming after him to kill him for over a century, and the fact if he wanted to, he could go back to the way he was, and relatively no one would have been able to stop him. The only people were the other dragon gods. But we know he wasn't. He wanted to do better, and he wanted to set himself at a better life. And because of that, I believe that's why he, as where he was, the first dragon god we saw, and the first one we experienced, was pretty much the best way that Mishima could have went about it. Because I think that the tone setting, that dividing line, a way that also refreshes and gives us aspects of the characters, of the lore, of it, like specific things about like Natsu's personality, events with the dragons, like so many things that we're reminded of and sat back up with just from conversation and specifics of the fact they didn't want to just go kill him. It wasn't just getting there and there was a big battle and chaos and they were going to fight. There were multiple steps going into that, and parts where they were working around it and thought they had worked around it and worked successfully about to do the right thing in aiding to Mercphobia in the best possible way, and not just killing him and pretty much ending what this town has had. Who knows what would happen to Armina if Mercphobia actually was killed. They would be without their god. They would be out like a major source of food. They would be out somebody who can keep a lot of the fish and different creatures in the area healed. So worry the nature of the characters, the nature of the other dragon gods as well, what was to come. We like just having two back to back like crazy powerful dragon gods just bent on being powerful dragon gods wouldn't have been as interesting. And that's one of the ways we could have had Alderaan, and it would feel fresh with him. It would feel like he actually like he's not just going to be another big bad guy. It felt more kind of like he was a dragon version of Zero to a degree. And I really enjoyed that about him. Because if we had that with Mercphobia, and then we had the same thing with Alderaan, I don't think that would have just made Alderaan feel stale and rigid. Whereas because of that setup, we were able to get a better picture of both characters and a better understanding of both characters in a way that makes them more unique, more stand out amongst their peers and the other characters in the series. And for Mercphobia to be a dragon that we see alive in real time, trying to help humans, trying to do good for them, I think is something that we've really needed throughout the series. Just like I think through Alderaan, we really needed a dragon who was just hardcore against siding with humans and just wanting to consume them and grow power from them. There's a couple other things we can really kind of talk about. I mean, like the general idea of like how powerful Mercphobia was. This guy who could literally lift up the ocean above his head, condense it down, and shoot powerful beams, and have manipulation to the point where even water frozen by gray, he can just undo immediately, evaporate and regain control. Like the level of velocity with his water to create a maelstrom that sucked Natsu up inside it, that straight just picked him up in a vortex. His interactions with Caramel, like somebody who ended up putting him towards like a better life. I'm really hoping that we see more between their characters at some point. I want Mercphobia to come back and have a more interesting role post the Ermino fight. But obviously right now it's a little strange because of the fact that he doesn't have magic anymore, and he doesn't have his form, which is one of the weirdest things to me because he is a dragon. If anything, he wouldn't be able to turn into his humanoid form because he needs transformation magic to do that. And to do that, he needs magic. So if he doesn't have any magic, he wouldn't be able to shift out of being a dragon, but he would still have his innate dragon abilities. I personally think this has something to do with Natsu's Aetherius powers, because both times we've ever like seen characters outright have abilities burnt out of their bodies, it is Zeref and Mercphobia both coming into contact with that fire that gets to the point where it burns Natsu's own body, which I think is probably one of the reasons that Mercphobia is the way he is now. Some form of strange ability that Natsu has that has put him like this. Or if it has to do with that weird tablet that Eleftheria has that tracks all the dragon gods. So when we look at Mercphobia, there's a lot more to get from him. Like there's a lot more valuable information we can have that he could easily just drop for us. But from what we've been given, I think for the amount of screen times he's had, he's been a really good character that only can be improved on. I don't really see many ways for his character to go down, because things like we pretty much got him chunk way into a redemption arc. Everybody loves redemption arcs. They're like, I mean, as long as they're done right and they're followed through, it's something that everyone can immediately like pretty much attach to. This character trying to do better. This guy who also I think has the tattoo reminder of the Jalal, like a little bit of a callback, I feel like, from Mishima. But all in all, a character that will be welcome back. I think Alderaan would be a character that would be like, some people would not really want him back, whereas like some obviously would. But I think Mercphobia is somebody who's way more anticipated to return, and hopefully so. I myself being one of them. I would love to see his character again and find out more about him. Right now he's just kind of chilling in Armina, doing whatever it is he's doing now as quote unquote human. So with that, I think that mostly wraps up this character like an analysis video. I'll probably put it in the One Archives. But yeah, like Mercphobia, I don't think there's anybody that has any negative opinions on him. I don't think there's anything relatively negative to say about him. And I don't think there's any negative directions his character could go naturally. Like the only way that you could really do anything negative with his character, I think at this point, would be like if Mishima outright wanted just to get rid of him, or intentionally did something to make his character look bad. Because we already know he's trying to climb out of that bad spot. He's trying to recover. He's trying to do better. So as long as he sticks on that, we're only going to really ever see positive things with him, things that are good for him as a development, isn't it, from where he was in the past to where he is now. And because of that, I think that his value as a character can only go up. So other than that, comment below. Tell me your thoughts about Mercphobia. Tell me your thoughts are about like this character. I mean, he's one that was fun, like seeing him pull up an ocean and then just kind of hold it over himself and start attacking and doing stuff was really badass. It was obviously a big shock when we saw him for the first time in a humanoid form. I actually had the belief that him and Caramel were messengers of the dragon god, like he was a water dragon slayer, and the dragon god was somebody that he was going to eventually lead us to. But we ended up getting him as that status. And I think the fact that we weren't sure, I think a lot of people weren't sure if he was 100% the dragon god or a person, myself being obviously on the person side, that really helped play into the whole theory around him and him wanting to live that more human-like desire, but from more of a positive standpoint and not as much as like Celine's where it's just for entertainment. Anyway, other than that, comment below, thumbs up the video, but for a like button, subscribe button, and check out my other videos. But I appreciate it. Always subscribe, and thank you all for listening. Bye.